Hello, BIRTHFIT community. This is Dr. Lindsay Matthews Cantu speaking. Sometimes I forget to intro myself like I did that last episode. And so, time to time, I'll reintroduce myself. Here I am. I am a doctor of chiropractic. I am a birth doula. I am a strength and conditioning coach, NLP practitioner, Mercier therapist. But most importantly, right now, I am your BirthFit podcast host. So here we are. I've got another amazing guest to chat with today. Her name is Kaely McDevitt, and she is a registered RD, I believe. I always butcher that. Let me just go through her bio for you before I try, go down the wrong list of things. Kaely, she's an integrative functional medicine dietitian. Um, she is very passionate about working with women and simplifying health for women and making just life easier, a bit more empowered. And I personally use Kaely a lot. I probably use and abuse my relationship with Kaely because of the wealth of information she knows. She's got a master's degree in nutrition and exercise physiology from Cal State Long Beach. She completed her dietetic internship with an emphasis on nutrition and physical performance. Her bachelor's degree is in dietetics, and she's a certified LEAP therapist. She's also done numerous other trainings, and you may find her on Instagram as Kaely RD. She's awesome, and she does private coaching, group coaching, and she's got an awesome team that works under her. She does brand partnerships, freelance writing, speaking, and also product formulation and feedback. And she'll be a podcast guest. So if you also have a podcast, get her on your podcast to be a guest and talk about a number of things. She's probably one of my favorite go-to nutrition resources. And let me send her the link so she is invited to get on here and party with me. But for those of you that have been through the BirthFit education, you have seen Kaely and you have learned from her. So today we're going to learn from her even more. Maybe we'll even get into some of my labs and blood work and what she has me doing. If you are in the preconception chapter, if you are healing after birth, definitely, reach out to Kaely before you go down, any rabbit hole and spend tons of money. She's affordable. She's simple. She's straight to the point. And like I said, has been one of my favorite resources. She believes in real food, just like I do, along the same lines of Lily Nichols. She believes in eating real food, pro-metabolic eating, and just a really healthy relationship with nourishing your body. And she also is in our B community. So if you are inside our B community, Kat is out of the bag. Feel free to connect with Kaely in there. So yes, she does training. She gets training. She does movement. Unlike a lot of these, functional medicine gurus that say they exercise or say they train, and I put that in quotations. She gets it. She does it. She practices what she preaches. So, yeah, Kaely's awesome. A few things before Kaely joins us. Don't forget to check out B Community. That is our awesome membership community. And if you are part of that, then you can just stay part of it. Let us know if you get pregnant. Let us know if you're in there new and you're postpartum healing. We got certain programs or certain training days that we've designed specific for you. Again, this community is for women, by women, and it involves fitness, it involves education, and it involves connection. We have guest speakers each month, and I know Kaely's coming up for one. So you better get in there. We have awesome opportunities to get really specific and hone in on certain case studies. So, if you're part of B community and you're not sure what's going on with maybe some area of your healing journey, let us know, and we'll try to get the right discussion synced up for you. Maybe it's like cycle syncing. Maybe it has to do with, healing from a prolapse. Maybe, it's investigating some lab work. So get in there, because this is where you can take full advantage of reaching out to myself, reaching out to Coach Leah, and then any of the other resources that we have. So I think it's a really, really beneficial community, and it's only, $24.99 right now. Get in there. I'm drinking my adrenal cocktail that Kaely has me drinking. It's delicious. I don't know if I make it quite right, but it's got coconut water, orange juice, and salt. I'm like on this major kick to up my sodium and potassium, so that's why I'm drinking that. And like I said, Shiri's read my blood work, read my hair tissue mineral test, and I really, really want us to get into some thyroid talk and explore that a little bit more. Y'all, if you haven't listened to the previous episode with Yolanda Norris Clark, go do it. Oh, so good. It's so good. Whether you're a fan of home birth or not, free birth or not, I think somebody said this really good at one of our seminars. We are advocates for home birth. We are advocates for, the natural birth process, because if we are not advocates, then that is going to disappear. There is so much money and power in the medical industrial birth complex that, it's a big, big bear. And you can choose. That's the glory of it. You have a choice in everything. You can choose where you want to give birth. But I think it's really important, even more so now than ever, that you start to recognize that choice can even start prior to conception. That choice can start first trimester as to where you want to give birth, how you want your birth to feel, what you want it to look like, and making decisions like that's being in action around those choices, around those values. For instance, like we talked about this briefly on the last podcast, like Yolanda definitely hit it in different aspects, but being able to say, I want a home birth. I will birth my baby at home. And then choosing a provider, maybe a professional midwife, that aligns with your values, that will support your choices along the journey. It's very hard when your actions are not in alignment with your values or desires or choices. So I want to be very clear there. That's pretty important. If you have not visited our website lately, I want you to go to birthfit.com, and I want you to go to the BirthFit shop. Then scroll down and definitely get your latest BirthFit swag. We got some awesome hats and awesome t-shirts and tanks for the summer. We also, if you scroll down even further, we have some awesome partners. And y'all have known we've been partners with like the Daisy Tracker, Ergo Baby, Bubs, Element. But we've got some new ones. We've got Rosita Cod Liver Oil, which is amazing. And this is really, this is my form of fish oil. And I put that in quotations because it's not like a true fish oil like what you think of. But it's fermented cod liver oil, and it has the best ratio of vitamin A to D, and you need vitamin A in the form of retinol in order to absorb D. It's also got EPA and DHA. So like definitely check that out. We also have a Katara Yoni steam set. And if you use the code BIRTHFIT you get $15 off. We have Primally Pure. Primally Pure is my favorite skin product. Like face soap, sprays, deodorants. It's just so yummy. It uses nature's most precious elements to make non-toxic skincare products that support radiant skin, a healthy body, and most importantly, your happy, confident self. And the last new product we have on there is Equip Protein. This is protein powder developed from 100% real foods. And I've been using it for the last month or so, and I freaking love it. So y'all know I make what I call a fertility shake in the morning. It's kind of my sarcastic spin on, you know, I hate all these drinks that are like fertility this, fertility that. But this truly is a like nutrient dense shake, and that's what you need for conception, for pregnancy. I make my fertility shake with raw milk. I use at least one raw egg in there, and then I will add a scoop of this Equip protein. I'll add some honey, and if I feel like it, then I'll break up maybe some organ capsules or the blood capsules and add that in there. So it's really, really freaking nutrient dense. If you're taking the prenatal full well, like you can definitely break apart some of those capsules and put in there. So it's really a quality, nutrient dense shake. All right. So I think Kaely's here. Kaely's ready. And let's invite her in. Kaely, just so you know, we're already recording.
Oh, hey.
Hey, welcome. How are you today?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. I was just telling them I'm drinking your favorite orange juice, coconut water, and salt, and I don't think I put anything else in there today. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Love it. I had one right before this too.
Aw, awesome. Well, okay, before we dive in, I want you to talk about your event that's coming up
Oh,
because
yeah.
everybody needs to mark their calendar for this, especially if you're in Texas, travel to this event. But yeah, share a little bit about this event that you got coming up.
Sure. Yeah. So it's called Restore and Reconnect. It is a 2-day women's health event. And we, for years now, have been wanting to create a space for this online community that we've created to come and meet in person because, I mean, there's something so like energetic and like uplifting of being in person with people, especially if, like me, you spend your days on Zoom and doing everything virtually. So that was one aspect. And the other thing was to create like a conference experience where we get to learn, but make it open to non-practitioners because, every year I usually attend at least one professional conference and I always find them so valuable. And a lot of our clients are super interested in health and would love to go to something like that too, but there wasn't something for them.
Totally.
So we were like, well, let's just freaking make something like that and jump in. So we went big for the first run of an event ever, but we're pumped about it. So it's October 15th and 16th in Cedar Park, Texas, so just north of Austin. And it's at a really beautiful outdoor venue. So we'll get to be like on grass, under the trees, not learning in a stuffy conference room. And it's a good mix of like conference elements where we have some lectures and we're going to learn and build out our health toolkits, but then some retreat elements too. And that's where, you come in, there's a lot of movement sessions and hands-on practice and just a chance to really refill your cup. I've been thinking especially about like the last 2.5 years of isolation and particularly for the moms who were trying to juggle like full-time childcare and work and just excited to get to spoil them for 2 days. So it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, that is a really good point because I know so many women, moms that have felt like their postpartum was robbed from them.
Yeah.
And that's the word that I hear most common, over the last 2 years. So if you're listening to this and you're at a place where you can travel for 2 days, come.
Yes, and
Definitely come.
nursing babies are welcome too. So I
Yeah.
get that would be something that would be limiting. So those babies can come as well. But yeah, we'd love to have you.
Awesome. And then do you want to touch on maybe any of the subjects or topics that maybe some lectures are getting into?
Sure. So we did a lot of polling of our audience for what people were really looking for, and two big themes stood out. One was hormone health in general. So we're definitely going there. There's a lot of like taking care of your hormones via nutrition and lifestyle, how to time your training around your menstrual cycle, herbal medicine for women's health, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
And then the other topic that was big, and it makes sense coming off the last couple of years, was how to take care of your immune system. And build a toolkit where you are more self-sufficient in that regard. So we have a lot of like taking care of your mitochondria and building energy and how your gut and your immune system are intimately related. And every talk is conducted by like just some really brilliant women in the field. And there will be actionable items from each talk that you can implement, like starting then.
Yeah.
And our big theme is just that you can take care of yourself. You don't have to outsource your health to anyone else. And
I love that.
Build that toolkit for you.
Yeah. So where can people buy tickets?
So the website is a long, clunky name because we did not buy a domain for it. So I will give you the link if it can be shared under a recording.
I'll put it on the show notes, everything. Yeah.
The easiest thing for now would just be to find me on Instagram, and it's in my bio link. And I'm just at Kaely RD on Instagram.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that information, because I know if I didn't ask right away, I would get to the end and it would be like, oh shit.
Thanks for asking, and thanks for being a part of it. I'm so excited.
I'm stoked. Selfishly, I'm stoked to just attend, like do a session and attend and not have the worry of like hosting an event. For those that have been following for a while, they know I've hosted the BIRTHFIT Summit.
Yes.
So they've probably heard me, go a little crazy at some points, but I'm here to support you in whatever capacity you need.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about you and, what you do in this world, and maybe introduce yourself to our audience and share a little bit about who you are and your services and your training. Yeah. How you got into doing what you do.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my name is Kaely, and I'm a registered dietitian. And I went into that field thinking I'd be in sports nutrition. Like I grew up being an athlete. That was interesting to me. I picked my internship based on exposure to sports nutrition. And kind of happening along the same time frame of all of this is I was put on hormonal birth control in high school for really symptomatic periods. I was like, yes, finally a solution for me to not be miserable. That was like the extent of the thought. And throughout the 7-ish years of my schooling, I'm like learning all this stuff about health and nutrition. I'm dealing with a boatload of hormonal symptoms myself and really just not feeling like me anymore. And I'm like voicing these concerns to my OBGYNs. I'm bouncing around from different birth control pills on the market and not really finding a solution and not being able to help myself with what I was being taught in school. So I finished my training to become a dietitian, feeling completely inadequate to help people because I couldn't help myself with what I was being taught. And I was like meticulous with application. And so I realized that I knew almost nothing about how the female body works, even after 7 years of like higher education in the health space. Like I took all the health classes. There was no education on this. And so I just dove into understanding the menstrual cycle, understanding hormones, understanding how hormonal birth control even works in the first place. And as I was digging into this research and really ultimately finding my way back to myself, coming off birth control, getting my cycle back, I realized that there were a lot of other women dealing with that too. And there was almost no information that was accessible out there. So I started a blog about what I was doing. And eventually that transitioned into a private practice because I realized that there was such a need for people that could speak to nutrition for women's health, because there's like no research done on women and nutrition. So it's been about 6 years of being in private practice. So my team and I work with women one-on-one to help them overcome hormone and digestive issues with personalized nutrition, is really how we would describe it. And we get to do really fun work and run some cool labs and solve some mysteries and answer questions and really just help people understand themselves better. So it's really, really fun work.
That's awesome. Oh, so yeah, let me back up. Like, what do you think the biggest problems that we face in women's health? Because like you said, there's very little research. More and more research is coming out. Yeah. But I was like you, where I came out, I was like, okay, I don't know anything. Like, wait, can we redo that again? Did I miss that somewhere?
Right. I know.
So yeah, what do you think are some of the biggest obstacles in women's health?
Yeah, I think we're up against a lot with the diet and weight loss industry and the marketing toward women. And even like the nutrition principles I was being taught in school were very calorie counting heavy and low fat. Yeah. And everything was being done to manipulate the body instead of to support it. And it really puts women in a position of opposition with their body. It's like, I have my goals. My body is something separate. I'm going to use nutrition and exercise to create a specific outcome. Yeah. Instead of being on the same team. That's one big problem. The lack of education about the menstrual cycle and hormones, and even just like the negativity around that experience. Like, you know, you kind of grow up being told it's going to be miserable and that time of the month is awful. And, oh, good, there's some inventions that we can just skip that part or we can blunt the symptoms, and just creating a lot of disconnect from like the power and beauty of cycles. So I think those would be the two biggest issues.
Yeah, the diet culture and the disconnect.
Yeah, we like that alliteration.
Yeah, it's so true. So you touch on in the BIRTHFIT education, basically metabolism and hormones. And I love the way, I just love your approach to things, like very real food based, very, you know, we can say pro-metabolic now. But can you describe, like, what is your metabolism to our audience? Because I know some people were still like, wait, what is that? Because we don't learn this in school either.
I know, right? You would think. Yeah. So metabolism is just the sum of all the cellular processes that are happening literally 24/7, 365 in your body that maintains life. We can think of it as energy production too. Like, we're creating ATP in our cells so that we can keep ourselves alive, our organs can function, our systems can function. And one small aspect of all of that is your metabolic rate and the rate at which you burn energy. And I think we get hung up in the math of metabolism in the schooling side. You know, it's very like science and math. It's not the nuance that actually exists in the human body. And then when most people hear about metabolism, we think, okay, fast or slow, I can lose weight quickly or I can't. Like, that's it.
Totally. So, question, and I wanted to throw in my labs later, but when, like, you know how you read my hair and tissue mineral test, when they say slow, so I have a slow metabolism 1 or slow metabolic 1, does that even equate to what we're like how you just said, we think of fast metabolism, slow metabolism. Does that even equate to that, or should we like go off on that deep end?
Yeah. I know everyone gets really hung up on the metabolic type on an HTM.
Yeah, totally.
And mine was a slow one the first time I did it too, and I was like,
You're like, so rude.
And the like body composition maintenance is part of that conversation, but it's not the whole thing. So really what that's telling us is that we are making cellular energy at somewhat of a reduced rate. It's usually because we're lacking some minerals, and it was the case for you and for me as well. But it's also telling us about the state of our nervous system. So the slow metabolic type tends to be more parasympathetic, which can be lower energy, more like rest and digest.
Yeah.
And the fast metabolic type tends to be stuck in the sympathetic, where we're really in that fight or flight. We're burning through a lot of our nutrient reserves because we're readying fuel for handling that stress. And we have to be slow or fast. Like there is no medium score on an HTMA. Like we're always going to be one or the other, and we ebb and flow with different seasons of life. So it's really just telling us, what does this look like for you for the last 3 months? How have you handled stress? What does stress look like? What's your compensation to that stress? Because that's different from person to person. So it's not as simple as this told me I have a slow metabolism.
Yeah. And I like how you said there's no right or wrong here. Like it is whatever chapter you're in.
Yeah. And that's hard because I'm the type of person that like, I wanted to get good grades. I want to see like a gold star on my labs. And you won't get that from an HTMA.
That's awesome. So, okay. Yeah. Let's go back. We can totally, like, if you have an example, throw it in or use me as an example, but, I want to touch on thyroid a little bit, because thyroid is it shows up a lot inside like this motherhood transition window. And, it's the first thing people are like, oh, you're not conceiving. We're going to put you on thyroid medication, without even running a full thyroid panel. Or, I've seen women that have come into my office and, they've gone to like the best functional medicine doctor. They've run blood work and still not a full thyroid panel, but they're like, oh, your thyroid shot. And they're like 2 months postpartum. And so then they start them on thyroid medication. Like, hold on. Like, we are still recovering from birth.
Right.
Like, what? So yeah, can you give an overview of like the thyroid, and then maybe we can get into it a little bit more?
For sure. Happy to, because this is like metabolism, really. So your thyroid is setting the pace of the way that your cells function. So if we're looking for like a system of the body that's directly influencing metabolism, it is the thyroid. And the action of our thyroid hormone on the cells enable the cells to do or carry out the functions that they're supposed to do that day. So we can't talk about one without the other. And we see it all the time too. And I'll add another scenario to the list of atrocities, and it's people having already gone through IVF. So like they went all the way through like the highest level of fertility treatment, and nobody ever looked at their thyroid.
Nobody touches their thyroid. Yeah.
I could get real heated about this. So we have to have a functioning thyroid to feel well, to function well. And especially if we're looking to conceive and carry a pregnancy, your thyroid workload is going to increase dramatically during pregnancy because we need to make energy, not just for you, but for the developing baby. So if we go into a window of conception with insufficient thyroid function, we're really, working an uphill battle here. And then the postpartum transition, there tends to be some changes in thyroid function too, because we have big shifts in immune function that happen during and after pregnancy. It's an extremely nutrient depleting time, like carrying a pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum. If we're not really intentional with nutrient repletion afterwards, we can end up in a hypothyroid state. So I think there's probably an epidemic of suboptimal thyroid function, even if it's not clinically significant. But I mean, we work on thyroid health with every one of our clients, and the symptoms that you might be looking for to think maybe my thyroid could use some work. Low energy is a big one, because this is talking about energy at the cellular level. We might notice slowed healing or slowed growth of nails, hair, slow like skin recovery. If you get a scratch or a bruise, it's just lingering forever. It can be slowed digestion too. So constipation is a common complaint amongst our clients. Feeling cold. So this can be just cold hands and feet, or if you use basal body temperature tracking for fertility awareness method, you might see really low body temps, which we see in almost all of our clients at the beginning of working.
What would you say low body temps are? Like, do y'all have numbers?
Yeah, so we want to see it in the mid to high 97s in the follicular phase, so the first 2 weeks, and we want to see it into the 98s in the second 2 weeks in the luteal phase. It's not uncommon to see that in the 95s and 96s.
For thyroid issues.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, and even mine when I first
I'll look
started
back at mine.
tracking, I think I was in the 96s chronically for a while until I was
Really?
really working on this. And that's a nice tool to use because it's not a lab test. Like you can do this for free and very easy every morning, right when you first
Totally.
wake up. And you can see that change in real time as a result of the nourishment that you give yourself, which is always really encouraging.
Yeah. Ooh, those are good ones because I'll share I was feeling so good, and then like all last year, and then when we opened the office January,
Mm-hmm.
I just started feeling more and more depleted,
Mm-hmm.
and my hands, my fingers were cold, and my toes were cold. My nails fine, but and I'm terrible about tracking my temperature, as you know. But the other thing that kind of gave it away for me was like I would get acupuncture or like random bruises, and the bruises would stay longer.
Yeah.
So I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yes. Something was moving slow and it made
Yeah,
sense, right? Like stress is going to be
totally.
one of the biggest things that would slow it
Yeah.
down. And it's not a problem that that happens. It's actually really, really smart that our bodies do it because if we're in a period of stress, which can be from opening a clinic, it can be from postpartum period
Yeah.
and nutrient loss, it can be from any number of things. But the body wants to make sure that you have enough resources on board to survive this stress.
Mm.
So we don't want to be burning through our stored energy rapidly with a really robust thyroid function. If we're really stressed out, we don't have the reserves. So one of the best defense mechanisms we have against future starvation is going to be to slow the thyroid down.
Mm.
And that's where I can get real soapboxy about the fact that we're quick to medicate instead of being like, why is the body adapting in this way? Like
Yeah,
it's my belief that the body does nothing by mistake.
I
And
like
we
that.
treat it like it messed up and we need to intervene instead
Yeah.
of being like, well, why are we having this response? And what can we do to unravel that underneath versus just adding fuel to the fire?
Mhm. I like that question. Why is the body adapting this way?
Yeah.
Because pharmaceutical medication, it's not designed to get to the root cause. It's
Mhm.
designed to mask a symptom or block a symptom or something, you know.
Yeah.
Great question. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So somebody is yeah, what are the different avenues you go down
Mhm.
as far as like checking out thyroid? Like let's
Yeah.
say I know like basically what you did with me and you can share, but is there a template where you're like, okay, I have these symptoms, then what?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're questioning suboptimal thyroid function for the symptoms that I mentioned, or difficulty conceiving, miscarriage, recurrent pregnancy
Mm,
loss, all of those things would be clues that we should probably take a look at what's going on there, especially if it's never been fully assessed, which it's very rare for us to have clients that have had a true thyroid assessment. So we want to get a complete thyroid panel. And when you get your thyroid checked, typically that's just TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone.
yeah.
Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get that and T4. But if those look normal, there's no further investigation from a conventional standpoint. And the problem with that is that TSH is literally the tip of the iceberg for thyroid function. It's literally a pituitary hormone that's telling the thyroid to do its job. And we can have normal TSH for a variety of reasons, but still have hypothyroid function in the
Mhm.
body. So we need to also be looking at free T3, which is the active thyroid hormone. So we know nothing about full function of the thyroid until we see free T3. We need to look at something called reverse T3, which is like the brakes the body can put on. And that's a really commonly elevated marker in seasons of stress because we talk about body stressed, conserving resources, let's pump the brakes. And then we also need to look at some antibodies that can be made against the thyroid to rule out an autoimmune component to thyroid issues, which is immensely common in women,
Mm.
particularly postpartum because of those immune shifts. So if we look at all of those together, now we can actually assess production, conversion, deactivation, and immune involvement in the thyroid.
Mm. Is there a more common culprit avenue than,
I don't
or it
know.
just depends?
Yeah, it just depends on the person. We do see a lot of low T3. So the like series of events that happens is we get the stimulus to the thyroid gland to make thyroid hormone, and it spits out almost exclusively T4, which is inactive. So that's a production image, is making T4. And then T4 has to get turned to T3 before it can have any effect on the cells. And that's happening outside of the body in places like the liver, primarily, also like skeletal muscle. And we see a lot of people with really poor conversion. So they're making plenty of T4s. The thyroid is doing its job, but we're really not activating it well. And that's a nutrient issue almost always. And we can get into that too. And what we looked at with you is an HTMA, which is the last step of the equation, is can we get T3 into the cell? And that's really what an HTMA is telling us about. There's
so T3.
Yeah. Yes. So we have to make it, we have to convert it, and then we have to get it into the cell. So there's 3 things that we need to be seeing before we can say with confidence whether or not your thyroid's doing its job. And the HTMA has a ratio on it called the thyroid ratio. It's calcium to potassium. And that's really telling us about cellular thyroid function. Can we get that T3 that we made, converted, and is ready to go? Can we actually get it into the cell? Because if we have a kink in the chain with production, conversion, or cellular uptake, all the symptoms are the same. It all looks like hypothyroid, but the cause is very different. So those are the 3 like pillars for thyroid function that we work up for our clients, and it's blood work and an HTMA that we like to see for like a complete assessment.
Yeah.
And you can have problems in multiple areas, but we have to know where the problem is to know how to intervene.
Totally. So can you answer this a little bit? Like why just going on like Synthroid or what that might not fix the problem?
Yes. So Synthroid is just T4 for one. So if we have an underactive thyroid, we don't know why, because it hasn't been fully assessed beyond the fact that we saw TSH rise, which is usually the first trigger for medication. If we just add a T4 into the mix, but our problem was the conversion, or our problem was getting it into the cell, Synthroid won't make any difference. And a lot of times people feel no different on medication. They're like,
that sucks.
But my TSH looks good, so my doctor's happy. And that's the end of it, you know? And I should add a disclaimer. For some people, medication makes a big difference. If it fit where your kink in the chain was, it will make a difference. And there's a time and place for it too. I'm not anti-medication for this, but I think we do a disservice by not investigating further. And there are other thyroid medications that have T3 in it, or are just plain T3, like Cytomel or some of the glandular options that are out there. And they tend to be a little bit more helpful if people did have a conversion issue. But my bigger issue with the medication is, like we talked about, why is the thyroid downregulated? And it is a result of lifestyle, diet, exercise, nutrient status. Why wouldn't we work on those things so that the thyroid feels safe enough to function well on itself, instead of adding external thyroid hormone into the mix and overriding this safety mechanism of the body? It feels disrespectful.
Oh, I like the way you said that. That's nice. That's good. Oh, okay. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about the hair tissue, the hair mineral tissue test. I always get it mixed up, but like there's some people are like, oh, that test is not accurate. But I found it truly like, oh God, that definitely looked into the closet of what I got going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are your thoughts with that?
Yes, I love it. I was really slow to use it. It was probably the last test that we brought into the practice a couple years ago, because I had heard a lot of the negative remarks about it not being an accurate tool. And at some point you're just like so busy, you don't want to learn how to use another test. So I'm like, I'll deal with that later. So the time came where I wanted to use it. I think I had a client that came in with one, and I was like, oh, I need to figure this out because I want to make use of it. And so HTMA stands for hair tissue mineral analysis. So it's a hair sample, not that fun to collect. You know,
no, I almost had an emotional breakdown.
I know.
Like,
yeah, you have a short chunk in the back.
Yeah.
Word to the wise, if you do this, have someone help you and take little samples from a few places, so you don't just have like a short patch. My hairdresser was like, what happened back here?
Yes, same. I literally got my hair cut like the next week, and she was like, can we talk about this patch back here? And I was like, oh my God, I had to send this in. And she goes, okay, I was going to say, you might need some blood work. I was like, no, that's the point of why I did that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's not, it's not that fun to cut your hair, but if you're strategic about it, it will go unnoticed.
That's
And
smart.
I have found this test to be like absolutely invaluable with our clients, to the point that we automatically run it for everyone that we see. And the rest of the lab testing we might do varies a lot from person to person, but I always want to see an HTMA because it helped to answer some questions about why some people got better and some people didn't, and why some people saw lasting progress with hormone or digestive stuff and some people didn't. And that's really how we end up adding tools to our practice, is like, if we get stuck a couple times, it's like, there's got to be a better way to look at this. And the HTMA is telling us about a 3-month window of time. So that's nice that it's not changed based on short-term changes of supplementation or dietary intake. And it's really telling us how we're handling stress and how we've been responding to stress in the last 3 months. And like in your case, we were talking about the fact that we all have different compensation patterns for stress. So you and I could go through the same thing and we will have very different looking HTMAs depending on how our body defaults. And if we know that about you, if we know when you go through a stressful season, we tank sodium and potassium, we start losing magnesium, then when you go through another stressful season of life, because it's life, that's going to happen, we can be proactive with that. We can just ramp up mineral use. And I find that really empowering. So it's been an immensely useful test. There's never been a time where I've regretted running it. It's also really inexpensive. Like in the realm of functional lab testing, it is very cheap, which is so nice. We love that test.
What was I just gonna? Oh, I totally blanked. Dang it! Dang it! This is what I was gonna say. The hair mineral test. What was interesting was, like I said, I was feeling fine like all last year, and I'll randomly run my blood work every now and then. And so then I started running it again to see what was off.
Yeah.
And nothing really was off. Like I showed you my cholesterol. Like according to Western medicine, they probably would have put me on, a cholesterol medication. But that when you went over the blood work and compared that to what was showing up in the hair tissue test, that was so helpful because thyroid never showed up. None of the other markers, like you mentioned, like, oh, this is lower, this could be a little higher, whatever. But you had to use the hair tissue test to look at the ratios or look at what was going on.
Those together is great because we see what's happening in the blood and what's happening in the tissue. And we really do need to see both if we're going to really assess somebody, especially if we get into the weeds with like the iron and copper stuff. We have to see what's happening in the blood and the tissues to get this bigger picture, because certain things are supposed to be in the blood, certain things are supposed to be in the tissue.
Right.
And you wouldn't catch abnormalities in either level if we didn't see both. So seeing them side by side is like super, super helpful.
So valuable.
Yeah.
So how do you explain, because so many people were like, well, I kind of described the blood work as like, okay, the last stage or the final stage of stuff showing up. But like you just said, some stuff is supposed to be here, some stuff is supposed to be there. How would you describe blood work to somebody?
So blood work, like I think describing it as the last thing that's going to be off makes a lot of sense, because we have to maintain pretty tight regulation of what's in the blood. Like from a survival standpoint, that's not going to vary greatly. So if we start seeing stuff that's clinically significant in blood work, it's been out of whack for a long time, and we're now seeing this show up there. So blood work is catching things that are more extreme, generally speaking. It's something that can be impacted by short-term changes as well. So like your hydration status when you get blood work is going to affect your minerals or your electrolytes, which is why that's not that helpful of a way to assess that. Tissue level makes more sense because we're getting a bigger picture of time. We're getting 3 months. And so the HTMA can catch things trending in the wrong direction before it would show up out of whack on the blood, which is great. And it really does all come back to the whole metabolism theme that we started with. and why I think HTMAs were an essential tool in our practice, because your minerals run your metabolism. Like those are the intermediary steps for all of the like ATP production pathways. So if something's out of whack with minerals, it's going to decrease the amount of energy you can make. Eventually we'll see stuff out of whack in your blood work, but long before that, we'll start to see symptoms in your health. And it's not always glaring clinical symptoms, but it's like just not feeling the vibrancy that you want to feel in your day. And yeah,
that's good. So how do you explain, like, there's a lot of people that come to us and ask, what macros should I have during pregnancy or conception, and how macros and minerals and all that fit together?
Yeah. So we don't generally prescribe set macros. That's just not not our approach here. It's like too annoying to me, to be honest. Like I don't want to calculate that, but we do want balance across our macros. And that's something that we do teach. So for anyone that might be new to that, we're talking about carbs, proteins, and fats as our macros. And then our micros are all the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, the non-calorie containing components of our diet. And our goal with nutrition is to create a feeling of safety in the body so that the thyroid can do what it's supposed to do, which means all your cells and organs get the energy they need to do what they're supposed to do. And that supports fertility. So we accomplish that by eating enough and eating with our macros in balance. So carbs, proteins, and fats together. And that accomplishes two things for us: stable blood sugar, which is a really, really important feature of our approach. And then it also makes sure that we have raw materials to build things like hormones. To build thyroid hormone requires adequate protein. To build our sex hormones requires adequate fat. Like we have to have representation from all three macros to accomplish that. So we go away from the extremes, like the high fat, low carb, and the low carb, high fat. Like we're smack in the middle where nobody finds it as fun. It's like the least sexy style of eating.
Yeah, it's not going to be on a billboard anywhere.
No, it's not. And just like real food, I feel like there's this shift happening that maybe it's just because of the people that I follow, so it feels like everyone's talking about it. But this shift of just eating like a normal human being, which is great. It's really refreshing.
Yeah. I love that. It's well, there was a podcast I was listening to. It was this older woman being interviewed, and she was like, I think she had like 6, 7, 8 kids. I don't know, but she was like, yeah, I did Weston A. Price like 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Like back when real food was, real food was not real food. Like people were doing the Atkins diet and things like that. But there's always going to be a diet, but there's always going to be real food there available. So choose that.
I know.
Wow.
It's good to see more and more people talking about it. And and it makes sense, right? Like that was the original design. We're just going back to that.
So wild. So you touched on a little bit inside of our work together, the iron and copper recycling system. And I have a little gone down a little bit of that rabbit hole with Morley Robbins and the Root Protocol, but I know it's completely new to like the BIRTHFIT audience, and it's even new to a lot of the birth workers, like some midwives and doulas and OBs. So yeah, can you touch on that a little bit and how that plays a role into our metabolism?
Yeah, I will say it's like new for most people, to be honest. Like it was a pretty mind-blowing thing for me to stumble into because it goes completely against what I was taught.
Totally.
And the reason for seeking this out in the first place was that we had client after client after client who had been on iron supplements long-term with no improvement in their labs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we can't be figuring this out, right? Like the solution can't be iron supplements if it's not working, right? Like we have to do something
Your
different.
labs say otherwise.
Yeah. And I was on iron intermittently too. Like I remember as an athlete being told like athletes get iron deficiency, so you should just take a multi with iron, and birth control has iron in it. Yes. So we have something, because the body is a genius and beautifully designed. We have something called the iron recycling system that recycles all but about 1 or 2 milligrams of iron that we need each day to keep red blood cells healthy. And so iron is really important for the way that we can carry and move oxygen through the body, and we need that oxygen to make energy. the iron is involved in thyroid function too. So it does have a metabolism connection as well. And the important thing about healthy iron is that that recycling system is in motion. So we want to be moving and using iron well. What we don't want is a slow, clunky, dysfunctional recycling system, which leaves iron accumulating in different places instead of being in motion. So Morley Robbins and the Root Cause Protocol is like who blasted this onto the scene.
And blasted.
And he explained this in a really good way. It was like the word anemia, if you look up the definition, doesn't mean lack of iron. It means no iron in the blood. So whoever named this understood the fact that there was lack of iron in the blood, but not necessarily lack of iron in the body. It just meant it was stored somewhere else where we couldn't access it. And that makes a lot more sense when you think about how ubiquitous iron is. Like we're getting a ton of iron. We really should not ever be deficient in iron unless we had surgery or lost a lot of blood for one reason or the other, because we get so much of it from food, and iron fortification is a whole other soapbox we could get on. And to summarize like a pretty complex topic, one of the most important nutrients we need in order to keep that recycling system working is copper. And copper has to be bioavailable, so usable, which means bound to ceruloplasmin, in order for this iron recycling system to work as it should. And there was some really interesting, like decades old research that was like a Nobel Prize was granted to the researcher that discovered that you could cure anemia with cod liver oil. So like we've known this connection for a long time. It just hasn't been mainstream. And cod liver oil is supplying vitamin A, which thankfully is abundant in a lot of these like ancestral real foods that we were talking about. And we need vitamin A in order to make copper bioavailable in order to move iron. So there's this whole web of nutrients that need to be in place for the iron recycling system to move well. So just seeing low iron in the blood or low ferritin doesn't mean we just need to take a bunch of iron. We need to zoom out and look at some of these other nutrients that are involved in how we use it and can move it around, because we don't see true iron deficiency almost ever in our clients, again, unless there was surgery or major blood loss recently. But we see like iron accumulation in the tissues. So an H2MA can tell us about that. We see poor iron recycling system activity, and we see that with like low copper status or poor copper bioavailability. And the way that we correct iron issues is with copper and vitamin A, not throwing more iron into the mix.
What is the deal with, like I've seen some people on Instagram giving blood, and you mentioned it a little bit. So how would that help this alleviate the, what is, because as women, we release blood monthly, right? Like, so are we supporting that system there?
Yes. So that monthly period bleed is like so much more than what it gets attention for. It's a detox event too. Like we are shedding excess iron, and we accumulate a lot of iron today because almost everything is fortified with it. And we only need 1 or 2 milligrams a day in addition to what we recycle to keep red blood cells healthy. So we don't need much additional iron. So accumulating iron is easy. A menstrual bleed is a way that we shed that. Donating blood is another way too. And once again, going back to like how genius the body is, if there is a blood loss event, like surgery or donating blood, the body is going to ramp up the production of those iron recycling enzymes. So we get more copper dependent enzymes in action as a result of donating blood. So donating blood is going to offload excess iron if we have it. It's the biggest, fastest way to move excess iron out, like in a single session. And we're going to increase or ramp up that iron recycling system. So we're going to start making more of those copper dependent proteins and enzymes, which is really cool that the body's smart enough to do that. It's like basically putting red blood cell production in high gear. And in order to make healthy red blood cells, we got to mobilize iron. So, and not to mention donating blood is life-saving for like potentially up to 3 other people. So there are so many benefits to it, but And if you're menstruating, you have the benefit of losing some blood each month and losing some of that iron. So blood donating for a menstruating female only really needs to be done like once or twice a year. But if you are postmenopausal or not menstruating for any reason or a male, you can do, 3 or 4 times a year.
Wow. So what if somebody has like I hear this a lot post-COVID,
Mhm.
post-COVID or injection,
Mhm.
clots
Yeah.
in their cycle. Is this an iron issue? Well, let's say they don't have the vaccine.
Okay.
'Cause that's a whole, there are things we don't know about that.
Yeah.
And we've chatted a little bit about that on this podcast. But let's say, they're just a regular woman with
Mhm.
clots. Do
Yeah.
you think iron recycling, copper stuff going on, or what are
Yeah.
your wheels telling you there?
It seems like that's involved because we've also seen some really weird iron labs post-COVID infection.
Oh,
And a friend of mine who works inside a practice run by a naturopath, her boss has been like collecting data on this since the start, which is really interesting. And it looks like we have a period of iron accumulation after the infection. And there are probably a lot of things to this. I think inflammation is like the big uh, cog in that wheel that's turning. There's a
yeah.
big inflammatory response of the body that's causing iron accumulation. I don't think that's the only thing. And if we have an inflamed state and we're making more prostaglandins, we're probably driving estrogen up as a result of that
Yeah.
inflammation. We can see clots from that as well. And of course, that inflammation is taking resources away from making progesterone that would help keep those clots at bay. So I think it's a couple of things, but
Yeah.
that infection just seems like a doozy. It
Yeah.
really throws the body for the loop.
Yeah, it's like total depletion. I know that's
Mhm.
what I felt, and then I started feeling good, and then opened an office. But like from people, it does feel like it just zaps their body,
Mhm.
um, and then yeah, it's done weird things with cycles.
Yeah, it has. Like
Mm,
disruption, change in symptoms,
mhm.
the clots and stuff is pretty common. It's been very interesting to watch and to be like early on in the exposure to something
Yeah,
where we don't have much data to go off. We're just kind of looking at trends that we see in our
yeah.
clients and chatting with other people that might be collecting data, but something definitely is up with that.
Ooh. Okay, so if somebody, touch on gray hair a little bit with
Oh
copper,
yeah.
and
Okay.
because hello. And I know I'm not the only one. And
Yeah.
yeah, what do you got there?
Okay, so copper is responsible for pigment. So we
Mm,
need copper to make melanin in our skin, so literally like ability to tan, but also pigment in our hair. And we mentioned the fact that we need vitamin A in the retinol form, so the kind we get from animal products, to use copper. Copper without vitamin A does us no good. In fact, it can cause a lot of symptoms. We can get like copper toxicity from that situation, but copper
mhm.
plus vitamin A equals usable copper. And we need that to regulate pigment production. So we've seen in clients that if we can correct that low bioavailable copper status, that like graying of hair resolves or improves. If you look into this, if you decide to get into this rabbit hole, you can see pictures of people's hair that they've plucked out where it was gray first and then it's growing in as its color next. So there's like a line in the hair.
What?
So
Okay,
it'll be cool to watch yours.
I'm like, I'm gonna pay attention. Well, like I shared with you, over the last year, I've really been charging, or like
Mhm.
at solid E for effort with like eating all the nutrient dense foods, crushing raw milk, dairy, things like that. And so I was noticing, I was like, I don't think my hair is getting gray anymore. Like I think it just stopped. I'm sure it is, but
That'd be great
it'll
if
be
it wasn't.
interesting. Yeah, I would love to see like what happens over the next year, whatever, as I know more and learning through you what happens with my hair.
Yeah, that's super
Because
interesting.
the great, like I shared with you, my real dad had gray hair
Mhm.
super young and early, but also I know there was tons of stressful events in his life.
Mhm.
And who knows about my mom, because she still dyes her hair, but I'm sure
Right.
it's gray. So it's interesting, because people say, "Oh, it's genetic," but
Mhm.
also like there's epigenetic stress too.
Yes, and the
So
fact
all
that, like, if it's nutrient dependent, like, you get
yeah,
nutrients from your parents, predominantly
yes,
your mom, so
yeah, it makes complete sense. So
yeah.
yeah, I'm stoked to watch that.
Yeah, that's cool. I know, it's
Yeah.
when I think about that, like, the family passing stuff on, and I think about, like, my diet as a kid and the fact that we had low fat everything. And I literally didn't even have red meat until I no longer lived at home because my mom just didn't cook it. Yeah. I had a lot of work to do. It's not a surprise to me at all that it took a long time for me to get my hormones back online, post birth control, and the fact that like I had no fats.
I feel like it's amazing that a lot of us made it out of the 80s and 90s with
alive.
With TV dinners and Twinkies and sodas and everything.
And Special K cereal. That one just haunts me.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, all the cereals. Whoa. Okay, before we get off, what are your kind of big picture recommendations around training and eating for your cycle? Like you've put out some awesome tidbits on Instagram, social media, but I know this is near and dear to your heart. So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think most importantly is that we're eating enough on a consistent basis. And I think so many women are surprised to know what that actually looks like. Again, because of all the marketing toward us and the 1,200 calorie thing that somehow has been out there, which is like the needs of a toddler, not an adult female, especially not an active one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. So actually eating enough and learning what that means, and eating carbs, proteins, and fats together so that we get enough of that and we keep our blood sugar balanced. If you do nothing else beyond that, we've already come really, really far. And you don't have to tweak this based on where you are in your cycle. I wouldn't consider that the first order of priority here. But once you're doing that consistently, we can start to adjust our food and training based on where we are in our cycle. And if you listen to yourself and you're in tune with changing energy and like interests throughout the cycle, this becomes easy to follow because intuitively we know what we need. But generally that first 2 weeks of the menstrual cycle, so from the start of your period to ovulation, we have more estrogen around. So we tend to tolerate carbs easier. You might find energy is higher, especially as we get close to ovulation. And that's a really good time to push intensity of your workouts, maybe hit a new PR on a lift. We generally are like moving and feeling really well then. And then from ovulation to the start of your period in the luteal phase, we should have more progesterone in that time frame than estrogen, which means that we probably do better with a little bit more fat, maybe a little bit less carb. I'm talking about relatively small differences here. And then usually lower intensity training. Very rarely are you going to feel on top of your fitness game at that time in the cycle. And you probably naturally feel more called to either like straight up strength and conditioning where you've got long rest periods, maybe more like walking, mobility work, just lower and slower intensity.
I love that. Awesome. Okay, so where can people find you to work with you, and how do you work with clients? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so we primarily do one-on-one work. We are working on a way to do this in a group setting too, so TBD on that. But if you find me on Instagram, which is where I do most of the educating, it's at Kaely RD. And we do have a link in my bio, which is the application for one-on-one client work. So we start with an application because we want to make sure that it's something that we can help with before we move any further. And then after the application, I get on a call with prospective clients, and it's a 30-minute free consultation where we can just chat more about their case and make sure once more, does this fit under the category of things that we can help with before we move forward? And then after that call, if it's something that we can help with and it's a good fit, I build out a proposal for them. And we do 4-month programs with our clients. Cool. And that's because hormone health stuff is not going to change in less than 3 months typically. So we want to make sure we have a big enough container with our clients.
I love that you said that because so often I get women at the office that are, come in for chiropractic care and they're like, I want to have a baby next week.
Yeah.
I'm like, it takes at least 3 months to influence your hormones. Like, hold on.
Yeah, I know. Gosh, the instant gratification thing is does not work in the hormone health space.
No. Hold up. You're awesome. And I love the work you're doing. And I was telling the whole community before you got on, like, I feel very fortunate to have you as a colleague and a resource. And I probably use and abuse my relationship reaching out. But I hope, if anybody's listening that's struggling, with their hormones or healing or conception or any of that, reach out to Kaely. Tons of information and such a valuable resource. Anything you want to leave with the audience? Any pearls of wisdom before you go?
Yeah, thank you so much for those kind words. And I feel the same way about you. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. So it's surreal to even be on here chatting with you. So I appreciate it. And I think my closing thoughts is just to remember how much power you have over your health. I think everything that's out there is disconnecting us from that. So the more we can tap into that, the better. And everything that you need in order to optimize your health is like within you and at your fingertips. It doesn't have to be complicated. So I think if there's nothing else that you get from any of the stuff that I put out there, I hope that it's realizing how simple this can be. So.
Oh, that's good. I love that. Thanks. Thank you so much for being with us. And I will definitely be emailing you back soon.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah, yes. Have a wonderful weekend. And I can't wait for your event.
You too. Oh my gosh. Yes, I'm so excited. I hope to see many of you guys listening there.
Yes. All right. Bye, Kaely.
Bye.
Oh, that was good. Y'all, for real though, go Kaely.com, KaelyRD.com, and that's KaelyRD.com. And then she has a little tab up there that says work with me, private coaching. You just slide right on down and get on her list there. And I really hope you can join us for the event. We'll be sharing links on BIRTHFIT, but like she said, go to her Instagram, her social media, and you can register for the event there. I hope you enjoyed this episode and all episodes of the BIRTHFIT podcast. And like I've said before, I want this podcast to be used so that you can make your own intuitively guided, informed choices around anything in your life. And, I hope these episodes bring you freedom and empowerment in your choice to just really step into who you are and to own your being here in this world. All my love, and I will talk to y'all soon.